My name is Rachel Folks. I'm the project manager of STEM Seeds, but now I'm going to be passing it over to my colleague Futi to get us started today.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as Rachel has mentioned, I'm Futi Ngongwe, also from SouthAfrica. I'm an operations manager there. We're just so delighted for you to join us for this exciting webinar. I'd just like to introduce our colleague from one of our key partners in the US, Emma Goodwin, who's the manager of education at Kohl Children's Museum in the greater area of Chicago. So just to recap these amazing series of webinars we've been running, today we'll be focusing on value of play, but we've got another one next week, Tuesday, and focusing on repurposed materials and how we can actually use those to spark STEM activities and STEM in this classroom. And then we've got another one 2 weeks time, another Tuesday webinar, which we'll share later on as well. So just to recap why we're doing this, what we're trying to hope, we really want to strengthen some relationships between US and South African Children's Museums to just really share expertise on successful teacher training programs focusing mostly on STEM and climate change. But we also really want to use this as an opportunity to provide opportunities for American experts at children's museums and community colleges to advise South African educators or also at children's museums and TVET colleges on successful implementation of high quality STEM and climate change learning programs. And lastly, we just also want to make sure that we are both mutually sharing knowledge from the US and South Africa on just really the best practices and what can be done in the field of educator training at children's museums. With that, without wasting more time, I'll hand over to my wonderful colleague, Emma Goodwin, who's just going to take us through the webinar. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Futi. We here at Kohl Children's Museum, we are so excited to be here and so excited to be a part of this amazing launch of the STEM Seeds curriculum and this fantastic resource that you all have. So without further ado, we're going to get started. So this is the first episode in a series of webinars that we're going to be doing STEM in the ECD classroom. And as Futi said, today we're going to be focusing on the value of play. So my name is Emma Goodwin. I am the manager of education at Kohl Children's Museum of Greater Chicago. I'm a former teacher. I taught at preschool and my students were 3 to 5 years old. And so while I was teaching in the classroom, I also graduated with a degree in teaching early childhood education from Marian University. When I'm with children, whether it's at the museum or when I am fortunate enough to visit schools, I most love exploring blocks, reading with kiddos, and then also listening to all of their amazing stories and ideas. So a little bit about the museum. Kohl Children's Museum, we're located in Glenview. It's a suburb just northwest of Chicago, about 20 minutes outside. We offer 17 interactive exhibits, and they're all designed for children ages 8 and younger. And so children's museums in the US and Play Africa as well, they're really designed to provide spaces for students to get hands-on experiences with real-world concepts and develop a sense of learning through play. It's really how we've designed and built all of our exhibits. They give students those hands-on experiences that they need to explore real-world concepts. And because of that, here at the museum, we really consider ourselves experts in play, and we love sharing all of the knowledge that we've been able to amass with teachers all over the world about just what play can do for young kiddos. So we're going to start today with this quote from Fred Rogers. And so Mr. Rogers ran a television show here in the US for over 30 years, ending in the early 2000s. And he really developed and was a pillar of kindness for young children and developed this idea that children deserve to be respected and treated as the young humans that they are. So play is often talked about as if it were relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood. And so everything that we talk about today is going to be centered around these ideas, that play is serious learning, play is work for our children, and play is valuable and possible in each and every one of your classrooms. So what is play? What is this idea? Play is needed time for children to fully and healthily develop. We want to look at things that children are doing for enjoyment. And the definition of Play Africa in the STEM Seeds curriculum is one that's going to be engaging, meaningful, socially interactive, iterative, and joyful. So we're looking for opportunities for each of these components to come through in interactions that our children are having. And so going off of that, play is going to look different every single time that we engage in it or that our students engage in it. There's not a single right way to play. Anything that's going to be combining all or some of these elements is going to be something that is playful and valuable for our students. So why do we play? We play for so many reasons, but the biggest one is that children are constantly learning through their play. So all of the domains and arenas that we as teachers really value are going to be things that our children are naturally developing as they're playing. So we're looking at a development of their physical abilities. So as they're playing outside, you might notice they're jumping, and eventually you might see that our students, after a lot of different practice with jumping in play, that they're finally able to jump steadily on one foot. Something like that is something that could easily be developed through playful situations. You'll also see a huge development of their social skills, and we'll talk about that throughout the entire webinar today. But solving disagreements, making friends, learning how to interact with others, they're going to be doing that constantly while they engage in playful situations with their peers. We'll see a lot of development of those cognitive skills or some of those harder skills for our students. So when we want them to be picking up new math skills, all of the STEM concepts that we're talking about in the curriculum and throughout these series of webinars, we will see all of those be developed with our students. So maybe they're playing in a area where they're trying to build a tower, and they're going to have to be counting how many pieces they're going to need to build that tower. All of that is a development of their math and science skills as well. We'll also see them develop new vocabulary, such as words that they would need to describe characteristics of things that they're playing with. So if they're building a block tower, again, one day we might hear them describe their block tower as big, but in the next few months, we might hear them describe it as humongous or gigantic. And all of those through playful situations with us as teachers and with them and their peers are going to be things that happen naturally for our students. And then lastly, with this picture right here, you'll also see the development of literacy skills. So this is one of my former students, and we had designed a pretend pet shop in our classroom, and he wanted to display and advertise to all of our other customers what pets we had in the pet shop that day. So this was his sign displaying which pets were available for sale. So whether students are writing street signs or menus that they want to use in play, we'll see the development of writing skills as they go along. So even though he was able to read this sign to me and display early reading and early writing skills as well. So we'll see those again naturally develop with our students. And then we have some of the more self-esteem and child-centered goals. So another huge benefit of play is that it allows children to face their fears and build confidence in themselves. They get to have really valuable experience with decision making and leadership, figuring out how to work in groups and figuring out creative solutions to problems. We can be there as children are deciding how they want to play, who they want to play with, and what they want to play with. And we can help push those skills and giving them those opportunities to tinker with their self-esteem and figure out exactly who they are as humans. The learning that children do in play is not something that can be replicated. It's not something that they can get anywhere else. And so because of that, we really want to provide as many natural situations for play as possible. So to tie all of this together, we're going to go into a little story from my first year teaching. My students were able to have a lot of outdoor time every day. So it ended up being about an hour and a half outside on the playground or in this little gated field that we had. And they loved going outside at the beginning of the year. They were constantly playing with each other. They loved going on the swings and the slides. And then eventually, we noticed that our students were starting to develop some fears of going outside. There was a honeybee hive, a student in a different class had gotten stung by a bee, and it turned into this really terrifying experience for some of my students because of the honeybees that were flying around the playground. And it ended up completely taking over my classroom. The honeybees, the beehive, getting stung was all that my students could talk about. Meal times, everything was centered around these bees. And my co-teacher and I knew that we needed to do something to regain our students' trust in going outside to the playground. So what we decided to do was we wanted to create some hands-on playful lessons about bees to show our students that bees are helpful. Bees are very valuable to our world and our environment, and that if we don't bother the bees, they won't bother us. So here in this picture, you can see some of my students. Bees have really fuzzy legs that latch onto pollen that's on flowers. And so we created a provocation or an activity where they would be able to answer that question of how do bees collect the pollen from the flowers. So they were able to see with the hands-on activity that the fuzzy parts latch onto more pollen. So we developed a series of activities like this. This is another one. We created a game around how bees search for nectar. So students, worker bees would go around and they would find flowers in the classroom that they would have to bring back. This created a ton of problem solving opportunities for my students as well. They had to work together to find the flowers. They had to work together to decide who was going to be able to take the flowers that more than one person wanted. It was a lot of opportunities for them to work together as a group towards a common goal of creating honey. Because of these activities, we did see a lot of our students feel more comfortable going outside. There was a lot less swatting. There was a lot more respect and appreciation for our environment, and our students were starting to feel more comfortable with being in close proximity to the bees, which was really exciting. My co-teacher and I were able to see that by creating a playful hands-on situation for our students, we were able to get them the concepts that we wanted them to have without sitting at the front of the classroom and lecturing them about something that might not be as tangible or easy to understand for them in theory. This was giving them real hands-on ways of understanding how bees are helpful. And along the way, we noticed that they were a lot more excited about the environment in general. They were noticing a lot more when we were outside, and they were really becoming young stewards of the environment and taking care of our world, which was really exciting. And so we see a lot of those benefits in play coming out here. We see the development of vocabulary. We see them really facing their fears and building kind of a coalition of students where they all felt empowered together and like they were comfortable again. I did, however, have some students that I didn't think were latching on to the concepts as strongly as others. And so that was a little bit concerning for me at first. But then we kind of moved on from the bee study and we're focusing on other things. And I kind of let it go until one of my students' parents came in and asked me about what we were learning in class. And she told me that her daughter kept talking about nectar at home and that her daughter was playing nectar games where she would have her dolls go around the house and try to find flowers and bring them back to the hive. And so eventually this student, I actually found out they had ADHD. There was a few different learning needs that they had. And so it was a really empowering moment, both for me and for her, where we kind of figured out that through these playful situations, even when I, as the teacher, didn't necessarily see the learning happening in this student in particular, it was still going on. And so having those increased vocabulary skills and having the parent communicate that to me as well kind of demonstrated the entire value of play to me in this situation that me and my co-teacher had created. So before we move on to playful situations, we're going to wrap up why we play with this quote that's also in the STEM Seeds curriculum. So responsive, rich social interactions with trusted and loving adults. Those adults are us. We are those adults that can create those healthy brain connections for all of our students. So when we look at the end of this quote, we want children to gain we want children to gain STEM skills through play. We are able to do that with healthy interactions that we have with all of our students. So we want to create playful times with our students where they feel like they can trust us as adults that are kind of leading their learning. And that will eventually transfer over into parent and family interactions as well. We're not going to spend too much time on the stages of play, but just as our students will make progress through the stages of play, we will too. And so the reason I have this up is because we want to focus on the fact that no matter what types of play you see your students engaging with, it is all normal, it is all natural, and there are stages that they will begin to move through as well that we as teachers and adults can help them progress through. So whether we see our students watching other children playing or beginning to have little bits of interaction with other students, it's okay. And through conversation, through us as adults intervening, we can build on those other playful skills. But if you're more nervous about playing with children, we can start small and evolve in our interactions as well. So just because we see types of play in these videos today that we might be more unfamiliar with, that is okay. And through small questions, small interactions, we can begin to create more playful spaces for ourselves and for our students. So we're going to jump into the different types of play. So there are 3 different types of play, and these are all in your STEM Seeds curriculum guide as well. So there's child-led to educator-guided play. So it's a spectrum that we're working with. So when we look at child-led play, we're looking at free play. So those are situations that us as educators don't have a huge hand in creating. We want our students to be the complete directors of the play situation that they are designing. On the other side of the spectrum, you have educator-guided play. So that's going to be instructional play where we have an idea of what we want our students to come out of this playful situation with. We might design the lesson, we might design the materials, but we're still doing this, we're still approaching it in a playful way. So looking at some of those B provocations or B activities that I had my students doing, I knew what question I wanted answered, I knew what vocabulary I wanted my students to come away with, and I designed the activity. That's instructional play. And then in the middle, you have guided play, which is a little bit of both. It kind of meets in the middle. So it's going to be situations that our students, we kind of create for our students, but we're still allowing them to guide where they want it to go. So rather than them coming up with something spontaneously, it's something that we provoke more. We're going to break each of these down. So as we move through the following slides and videos, we're going to think about how we can support our students through play as their teachers. What hand can we have in these playful situations when we go back into our classrooms? So we're going to do this through the lens of see it, name it, do it. So when you see this, you're going to focus on the definition of each type of play. We're going to go through that first. And then we're going to watch a video that highlights that type of play. And when we watch that video, we have questions that we're going to focus on, and you can write down or reflect on how you see the play happening, answer the questions that we'll go through. After we watch the video, we're going to name it. We're going to reflect on the differences and how we approach play and how we see play happening in the videos. We want to look at how the videos help support students in play. And again, as we're going through these, you can write down how you notice these types of play happening. And you can write down how you think this could be applicable in your classrooms, whether that's questions that you hear the teachers asking or real lessons or real vocabulary words that you think that you could meld into your classroom as it exists already. And then the last piece of this is that we're going to do it. So normally this would look like us actually going in with students and creating these types of play. But instead what we're going to do today is we're going to think about specific questions. We've got a few questions listed out that you can ask when you're with your students and the interactions that you can create to help build these playful skills. And throughout this whole process, you can be writing down or thinking to yourself concrete ways that you can do this in your classroom. So we're going to start out with instructional play. So this is the play that has those identifiable learning goals, like those B lessons. It's the play that's going to be more educator guided. We want the goals to be achieved in a playful way, in a hands-on way that doesn't involve a lot of description from us, but allows the students to tell us about what they're noticing. So this is examples such as discovering what sinks and floats, sorting by shape, sorting by size, sorting by color. In this picture, you see a student who's got a variety of different leaves out, and they are figuring out which leaves are the biggest and which leaves are the smallest. You can see a little hint of a paint swatch, so there's also opportunities for them to sort and match by color too. So we really want our students in this example to be focusing on their early math skills, but we're giving them a hands-on way rather than us holding up a picture of different leaves and having them name which one is smallest and which one is largest. We're giving them a way to sort it out themselves. So we are going to watch a video now that shows us an example of instructional play. So while we're watching the video, we want to look for examples of the teacher. Her name is Kristen. We want to look for examples of when she gives up control. We want to observe the teacher giving students opportunities and power throughout the investigation. Take a peek at what science and math concepts we see involved in this lesson. And we also want to pay attention to the questions that Kristen asks that help build on what the students should be learning about. So again, this is time that we can write down our noticings that we see happening in this classroom. Here we go.
Friends, today we're going to add some water and we're going to mix it with cornstarch. I want to know, before we do the activity, let's get our thinking caps on. Put them on your head. Let's think, what would happen if we put water and the cornstarch together? It will melt. These are all great observations. Madison, great job pouring. All right. Ava, here's some cornstarch for you. All right, you can start putting some water in. And let's see what's going to happen. In my experiences, children seem to learn best through play. I like to make it interactive with the children and very hands-on. This activity was a silly science activity, making some slimy oobleck. This morning, the children were able to experience the fun of eyedroppers. Children had to squeeze and squirt, which also goes along with the S theme that we're working on this week. And we also were able to put the water and transform it from a cup to a bowl. After we practiced that a few times, we decided to get messy and have a fun project. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to make some blue, and then we're going to mix them together, and we'll see what happens. 1, 2, 3. Okay, use our eyes. Oh my goodness, what color is it making? Green. So when we put blue and yellow together, what does it make? Green. Green. So this ties into our Science Rocks curriculum, as well as ties into our Math Counts curriculum. We're using our science skills by predicting what's going to happen, then pursuing the activity, and then doing a conclusion. We use math concepts to work on the actual fine motor skills. A lot of people don't realize that fine motor skills is part of math. So we're using our fine motor skills to squeeze the eyedroppers and release. We're also watching how the water transfers over to a bowl. The different weights and different volumes is part of the activity.
All right. So let me just get the presentation back. So now that we've watched that video, we want to look at, give me just one moment. We want to go through and name examples of when we saw the teacher engaging in these skills. So get it? Okay, so the when we're looking at ways that the teacher gives up control, we see a lot of them. So the teacher, Kristen, she allows the children to use pipettes to transfer the water. She allows them to mix their own bowls. We see that she even allows the children to distribute their own food coloring into the oobleck that they're creating. And this is all examples where it could get really messy in the classroom. These are all things that us as teachers, we could do ourselves, but instead she's giving children power and she's giving them a hand in the investigation. By allowing them to do these things themselves, it develops a sense of autonomy, it develops a sense of independence, And it allows them to get more connected to the concepts that they're exploring. So these are all examples of how she gives them power and opportunities. So the science and math concepts that we see them exploring capacity, we see them exploring measuring, we see that they are able to observe different reactions when they mix the water and the corn flour, again when they mix the food coloring, and again when they mix the colors together. All of this is giving them hands-on ways of exploring different chemicals, different solids and liquids, different science concepts, as well as following a recipe, which is inherently mathematical for our kids. And the questions that she asks, she has the students make predictions at the very beginning. She asks some questions throughout the entire investigation to continue checking in on the knowledge that they're gaining. And also, when she has them make predictions, she repeats their answers back to them. So all of these things are giving our students a sense of power and a sense that they have control over the investigation and what's happening, even though it's something that the teacher herself designed. So ways that we can do this in our classroom, these are going to be things that you can take back with you. So we can ask our students to make predictions or guesses before doing an activity that we have planned. When we do this, we want to repeat each student's response. So one of the students says to her that the reaction is going to be that that it will melt. And the teacher, Kristen, she knows that that's not what's going to happen, but she still honors every student's prediction and guess by writing down what they have to say, putting their name next to it, giving her students a sense that they're really being listened to and they're really being heard as young scientists. Other things that you can do is ask questions throughout the investigation that you have planned. So you can say things such as, why do you think that happened? What do you notice? And what do you think? Rather than us teaching them what we have planned, this gives them opportunities to reflect and tell us what they see. So next, we're going to move into guided play. So this is play that's guided by an educator, but we don't have a specific outcome in mind. We maybe want them to bump up to different science and math concepts, but it could be a variety of different ones that we're looking at. And really, we just want to see what our students are able to come up with as investigators. We might give them materials to pose a challenge. We might give them a provocation, but there isn't going to be one single way to play. So in this example, you see a student and he's experimenting with balls that are going down a ramp. The student had absolutely no interest in creating a very steep or a very low angle ramp. Instead, what this student wanted to do was he wanted to test the speed that different balls were able to go down the ramp on. So he wanted to see which one was the fastest and which one was the slowest based on the material of the ball, not based on the height of the ramp. So these are materials that we as educators gave to the student, but we didn't really care how he was interacting with the materials. We just wanted them to be making observations, playing around, and getting those beginning science skills that are important as investigators. So in this video that we're going to watch, we're going to see a video from Edutopia, and it's going to be with a child care center educare in New Orleans. We're going to watch a teacher, her name is Janae Parham, and we're going to see what she does to extend her students' learning. Her student's name is Adrian. We want to pay attention to how we see Adrian playing both with his peers and with his teacher. And even though she did not design this activity, the teacher is still building on really big concepts. So we want to take a peek at how she does this. And again, these are opportunities that we can take to write down the different noticings that we're having of what the students are doing. So let's see this one.
The classroom. You're gonna build your castle too? Adrian loves to build, and he's really thoughtful about where he's gonna put what. He was building a structure and it kept falling over. And he was like, you know what? I'm gonna move this structure over to the wall. Why do you need the wall? So that it won't fall down. Okay. The bottom is called the foundation. So did you make sure your foundation was sturdy first? I gave them that vocabulary of foundation and stability and gravity. What's making that big, heavy, tall block stay on top of that little small block? So when you put the smaller pieces, Adrian. Come out, come get it, Adrian. What happened? It started to fall. Why do you think it started to fall?
We can't see blood.
Because of this one, so this one made it what? lighter or heavier?
Heavier.
Heavier. So you think you can't put heavy pieces on the edge or it's gonna fall?
No.
All right, there you go. Also, we have.
All right. So in that video, we see the teacher doing a ton. Janae is figuring out a bunch of different ways that she can engage Adrian. And even though she did not herself design that activity, we're still seeing a bunch of ways that she's able to push in those higher level thinking skills. So one way that she extends Adrian's learning is that she allows Adrian to fix his own tower. She allows him to fix the problem. She helps it from completely falling over, but she still has him find the solution and figure out what he needs to do to make the tower more stable. Other ways that she extends his learning, as well as building on bigger concepts, is the questions that she's asking. So from the very beginning, she asks him, why do you need the wall? And that allows Adrian an opportunity to reflect on what the wall can provide that the floor is not doing for his tower. She constantly is repeating his responses, and within that, she's also giving him bigger grammar structures as well. So sometimes our students will tell us a sentence and we can rephrase it back to them that honors their response, but also pushes in new vocabulary or different sentence structures. So she tells them so that it won't fall down. She provides new vocabulary, and the key to that is she uses it multiple times. So the bottom is called the foundation, and then continuing to work on the foundation. We see problem solving here. We see that Adrian addresses his first frustrations and is able to fix it later on. And all of this is really empowering for Adrian. So how do we see Adrian playing with his peers or with Ms. Parham? We see Adrian playing with his teacher throughout the entire interaction, but intermittently, he also allows other children to participate in building the tower. So this tells us that the teacher has created play situations in the past that allow the students to interact with each other in a way that is creating a healthy classroom community. So when we give our students more play opportunities, we are creating opportunities for them to build relationships with their peers as well. So how can you take what this teacher did and do it in your own classroom? And again, feel free to write any of these down. This is also going to be posted later. I know we're covering a lot today, so you'll be able to rewatch this at a later date on Facebook if you'd like as well. So ways that we can do this. When you think about any STEM center, so a center is going to be either a place in your classroom that you have carved out for one purpose. So it might be a STEM center or a science center, blocks, something like that. It also could be a temporary space. So whether you bring out a box of different building materials or science materials and have it out for a stretch of free play time, all of those are going to be working center spaces in your classroom. So when you think about any center or space in your school, make yourself a list of new vocabulary that you want your students to use and repeat those words as you play with them. So this is not a list of vocabulary that you're going to have up in the classroom and you're going to have students walk you through and define every day. Instead, this is going to be vocabulary, just like Janae does with Adrian and the word foundation, that you're going to push in, you're going to repeat naturally, and you're going to watch as the students pick those up. Another thing that you can do is you can pick a material and pick a broad activity and figure out a way to combine them. So one way that you can pick your activity is you can figure out something that you're noticing your students are maybe struggling a little bit more with. So maybe you're noticing that some of the counting skills with your students are an area of more concern. So if that is what your concern is, you can ask your students, how can you count with this material? Or you can push that into building as well. So if your material for the day are leftover cardboard boxes and you want students to build and assess engineering concepts, you can say, how can you build with these boxes? The activity is super open-ended. You're letting them explore and ask any questions that you have, but you're still able to explore and observe those STEM skills with your students. And our last type of play that we're going to talk about today is free play. So free play is when our students are completely guiding and completely determining how they're going to play. They get to choose who they play with, what they play with, and how they play. We can observe, we can ask supporting questions. As we get more comfortable, we can play with our students, but we're still allowing our students to direct the play. So in this picture, you'll see some of my former students, and we had gone out to the playground one day and it was kind of wet outside and they noticed some worms on the ground. And their goal for the day was they wanted to find worms. They were so curious as to where the worms were coming from, how the worm got there on the sidewalk. They wanted to figure out how they could explore more. So we didn't have any tools for them to dig with. They didn't want to dig with their hands. It was cold and they didn't want to get dirty. And so their solution, their problem that they solved was that they were going to dig with their shoes. And you can see the students who didn't want to dig with their shoes were able to observe. You even see that one of my students, she's got little suede boots on. And so she didn't want to be digging in the dirt. She wanted to protect her shoes, but they're still able to engage in the play that the other students are directing. And this allowed these were students that did not typically play together, but because they came together for a common goal, they were able to create a playful situation and solve the problem, solve the question that they had. Me as a teacher, I was able to go up and observe and ask them what they were noticing. But my job here was not to give them more information necessarily about worms, but to ask them about the decisions that they were making. So we're going to watch one last video. And in this video, it's from a TikTok account called Along Came Abby. We want to see how Abby's dad, who's filming the video, extends Abby's play. What types of questions is he asking her? And even though this is just a conversation that we see, it is still so playful for Abby. So what are some ways that the video shows conversation that's developmentally helpful for Abby? I love the questions that we're going to see in this one, so you can kind of take note or write down any of these that are particularly meaningful for you as well.
So there might be a little bit of frogs, and my dad's the king.
Your dad's the king frog?
Yeah. Actually, he's the king of the frogs, and my mom is the queen of the frogs.
Nice.
Technically, they're always married.
And what's the life like of frog royalty?
Well, I kind of am a prince. I'm a boy in the game. I'm a boy.
Oh. Well, Prince Frog,
Hello.
I'm excited to meet your
I'm a
parents.
human.
You're a human?
Yeah,
How'd you get frog parents as a human?
because my parents died, and then frogs who didn't have a child adopted me.
That's amazing. What are their names?
My dad is Frederick. My mom is Rosie.
All right, so in that video, we see this amazing interaction between parent and child. But just because it's between parent and child doesn't mean that it's not also something that we could create in our classrooms as well. So one way that he extends Abby's play is he asks so many questions. So one of my favorite ones is, what is the life like of frog royalty? He is asking her questions that are so open-ended. They could go in any direction. You never have any idea what is about to come out of her mouth or what she's about to say in this world that she's created. And so another thing that he does is that he validates her play. So rather than saying something like, you couldn't possibly be human, he asks her how that's possible in the world that she's imagined. And so because of that, we see that he is developing this sense of confidence in the imaginative scenarios that Abby is coming up with. And all of this is so playful for her because she's allowed and able to imagine that things are different than what they are. And that's inherently playful as well. One way that this is developmentally helpful for Abby is that she is developing conversation skills. She's able to test out expanding vocabulary, and she's able to make decisions, even ones that disagree with her dad's ideas. So she's not afraid to correct her dad and stand up for her own imagination of what she has created. And ways that we can do this in our classroom. So we want to think of questions or statements that work always. All the time, no matter what our students are telling us, this is something that we can drop in that is going to create a more playful situation for our students. So some of the questions that I really love and enjoy are, can you tell me more? Can you tell me more is one of my favorite questions of all time, so much so with children that I've started infusing it into my conversations with adults. It allows students purely to express themselves without any agenda or any feeding on our part of what we want to hear. Another one is, how do you know that, or why are you doing that? And with these, it's really going to depend on the tone that we ask them with. So if I had gone up to my students that were digging and said, why are you doing that? In a way that was maybe menacing, they would have gotten a specific idea about the way that they were playing and that wasn't okay. Instead, we want to ask with a way that inspires curiosity and makes them proud to tell us what they've discovered or the investigation that they've begun. Other things we can do is we can ask our students what they need from us. When we see children digging or poking around, we can say things such as, can I explore with you? Or ask if you can be invited into their play. And if you see something that's maybe messy or that you would prefer your students don't do, we want to discover why they're doing something before we try to stop them. And if it is something that we as teachers decide is not going to work as a playful situation, we want to work together with our kids to find alternatives for the play that still allows them to have their needs met. So that was all for the types of play. And really quick before we sign off, I want to go over how we can maintain organization and respect throughout playful situations. So one way is that we can roll out play in phases and roll out centers in phases as well. So my first year teaching, on the very first day of school, opened up every center in my classroom and allowed students to play how they wanted. It was a complete disaster and it did not go well. It wasn't until we did a full classroom reset and rolled out our centers one by one that we were able to get some of the organizational skills that a classroom needs back in place. So you can roll out a center one at a time with a smaller group of students, allow them to play, and then set aside specific time for them to tidy up the area as well. This allows them to feel like there's a buy-in, feel like they are connected to the materials that are in their classroom, and make them feel as though they are responsible for those materials as well. We can gradually allow students to play more and demonstrate that they understand their organization after playful situations. We can also label our shelves, boxes, and centers as a whole so students can tidy more easily. And so here in this back corner, you see the red and blue paper. Those are all outlined with different blocks shapes. So this allowed my students to play around with one-to-one correspondence, with shapes, and with matching of shapes as well. And these are all things that are going to help us to maintain a clean classroom as well. So thank you so much for joining us today for our first edition of STEM in the ECD classroom. Just to recap everything that we've covered today, we play because we know that our students are learning and growing and developing as we provide playful situations. We, as their teachers, we want to raise, encourage, and educate children who eventually grow into adults who still want to learn and are passionate about learning. And we want to see the hard work that we as teachers do reflected in ways that we might not have guessed or anticipated. We might not see the expressions and the vocabulary and all of the skills that our students will demonstrate. We might not have seen those coming, and that's a really rewarding feeling. And we know that play is a unique opportunity for all of our students that we alone can provide in ways that are both educational and fun for each and every one of the kiddos that walk through our doors. So please join us for our next webinar. It's going to be at the same time next Tuesday. We will be focusing on using repurposed materials, and we'll talk a little bit more about play as well. So thank you so much. We're going to have, I think, some Q&A time now. But just again, thank you so much to the Play Africa team for having us on, and for all of you for attending and coming today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma. That was so inspirational. If you do have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A. Just a few notes. The registration for the next webinar you can find on the Play Africa Facebook page. Please feel free to share that around with anyone who might be interested. And this curriculum that Emma referenced, STEM Seeds, it's available on the Play Africa website for free. www.playafrica.org.za. Click on the free resources tab and you can download your free copy today.
So I see one question in the Q&A that the teacher is only in the cornstarch and water activity and in the blocks activity as well, that the teacher is only working with 3 to 4 students at a time. And so looking for suggestions for teachers who may be the only adult in a classroom that has a much larger group of students, which is maybe more common.
Emma.
Yeah.
Sorry, you cut out for a minute there.
Oh, did I? Am I back?
You're back.
Okay. So when the teacher is only working with 3 to 4 students, but in some classrooms, it's more common to have 28 to 30 children with 1 adult. So in a situation like that, I would really lean into the play that the children are doing with each other. So you as the teacher, you might serve as the bridge for play. So your strength is going to be in the conversations that you're able to inspire between your students. I also would try, if possible, to have students work in groups as well. These group dynamics, even if we're the ones setting the groups, are going to give them opportunities to do the same type of activity or have the same types of interactions, but will be able to diffuse a little bit of the responsibility or diffuse a little bit of the role of the teacher as well, and give the students more power. So if you can have the students work in groups, and then if you can be the bridge of conversation between different children interactions that you see happening, that would be my recommendation. All right. Any other questions? Thank you all for coming. And even if you were late, like Rachel said, it'll be posted later, so you can always catch the beginning. Yes, we love open-ended questions. I hope that at the very least, you're able to leave today with a good list of open-ended questions to take back into your classrooms.
Okay, and maybe everyone's saving their questions for next week. I'm excited for that session.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
All right.
Well, if you have any last questions, now's the time. Okay. Thank you so much, Emma.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
It's so nice to collaborate with another children's museum.
Yeah.
And thank you to all of our attendees. Thank you for coming. And we hope that you have a very playful day.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you again.
You.
Bye.